FantasyWebNovel, Chapter 561. A New Enemy Part 1. The tables had been turned, but both Lith and Solus knew it didn't mean much against a fellow awakened one, whoever the assassin was. He only needed to use invigoration to go back to his peak condition and get rid of the venom, but luckily the same applied to Lith. "Behind you," Solus yelled as a new enemy blinked at their back. Lith turned around as fast as he could, noticing that the newcomer was swinging a curved blade at him. He was a young-looking man, barely in his 20s. He had light brown skin and several tattoos on his face. He reminded Lith of the man who had fused with the Black Star to prevent its destruction. Unlike the assassin, he wasn't wearing any cloaking device, so his body shone like a light bulb to Mana sense. Bright cyan mana core, infused with all the elements, and everything he wears is enchanted. Solus said without waiting for Lith to ask. He could see the weapon's trajectory, but unfortunately, his body couldn't keep up with it. Lith was still bleeding profusely from his chest and the venom was still ravaging his body. The best he could do was intercepting the scimitar with his arm protector. The enemy was fresh and charging with all of his weight and fusion magic, whereas Lith was running on fumes. The curved blade pushed Lith's arm down and opened a deep cut from his left shoulder to his right hip. The assassin's venom coupled with the blood loss made Lith fall to his knees as the new enemy spun on himself to decapitate him with a horizontal slash. The blade hit only air as Lith was suddenly swallowed into the ground. Solus could use only a few powerful spells before running out of mana, so she had to pick them carefully. The first one she had weaved was a warp steps leading back to Lith's room. She placed it under his feet, turning gravity into their ally. Had she chosen to heal such deep wounds, the spell would have drained what little stamina Lith had left, while countering the venom would have required for her to not take part in the fight. Lying on the floor of his room, Lith gasped as blood kept gushing from his wounds, forming a small pool under him. Breathing was becoming harder by the second. He shut off his pain receptors to gain enough focus to be able to use his breathing technique. Invigoration healed his wounds almost instantly, yet the venom proved to be harder to deal with. It had caused extensive damage that couldn't be treated without first cleansing the toxin. Whatever it was, its maker had infused it with darkness magic, making it capable of rotting its victim's body and using the light magic used against it to empower itself. That was awfully close. That assassin knew who I was and that I'm an awakened. The venom, the cloaking of his mana core and of his equipment, everything was made to counter how an awakened usually fights. Lith thought. It took him only a few seconds to get rid of the toxin, yet the process seemed to last hours to him. He kept looking around his room, waiting for his enemies to open a warp steps and finish him before he could recover. Right after Solus had brought Lith to safety, the youth with the scimitar was giving his all to save his comrade's life. "Wake up, Kieran, you know I suck at healing." He was mostly talking to himself since Kieran was unconscious. Being gutted like a fish with most of his organs damaged was already bad. Balcor's venom eroding his body and turning his mana core gray only made things harder for the second awakened. He was forced to gamble what would kill his friend first, if the bleeding or the never-seen-before toxin. He could only treat one at the time with invigoration, at least on someone else. As most awakened, he had always considered healing magic a waste of time, since there was nothing that branch of magic could do that invigoration couldn't do better. Diraniel decided to bet on the awakened's iron body and remove the venom first. As soon as Balcor's toxin was cleansed, light fusion started working again, making Diraniel work much easier. "What the fuck were you thinking, man?" he said as soon as the assassin regained consciousness. "Your stunt might have compromised the whole plan. Besides, we came here to see if the guy is as strong as that old bat Ragu says, not to kill him." "Talk for yourself," Kieran said while using invigoration to return to his peak condition. "I'm sick of hiding like a thief. Tired of my master always reminding me of being careful of fake mages, undead, guardians, and all of that crap. Damn, we trained for over 15 years, spitting blood every single day, and yet they always treat us like kids. I want to prove to that old fossil that there's nothing we awakened cannot face." "Yeah, right. Remind me again, who saved your sorry ass?" Diraniel sneered. "That's different. The fucker took me by surprise." "Right, your ambush took you by surprise. It totally makes sense and doesn't sound like a pathetic excuse only a 10-year-old would use." Diraniel was already regretting having saved Kieran's life. Only when both Lith and Solus were back to their full strength did Lith allow himself to relax. "If they didn't barge in here already, it means they have no idea where I am. Who were those guys and what's the beef they have with me?" Lith thought. The assassin mentioned the Black Star and someone named Treyas. "Maybe they are friends with the awakened from the Blood Desert you killed a few months ago," Solus said. "Unlikely." There was only spite in his voice, not rage. "My guess is that he had to be quite young. Aside from his carefully planned attack, everything he did and said seemed like a teenager during a measuring contest. Like he had to prove something. The real question is if he attacked me because I was near the Church of the Six or for a completely unrelated reason." Lith's paranoia could easily trace a connection between two awakened, a new religion, the Griever, and even with J.F. Kennedy's death. Whatever the answer is, maybe it's better to ask Freya's help. She's bound to know something about the Church of the Six, and awakened cannot show themselves to the public. "Together you can take both of those guys out," Solus said. "Unless they decide to go all out despite the presence of witnesses or there's more than two of them. Anyway, I've lost my opportunity for today's ritual, so secondhand information is better than nothing." Lith thought while watching the storm intensify again. For a second, he considered the possibility of the awakened assassin using the venom to cause the griever, but he discarded it immediately. It's made to kill, not to incapacitate. Also, someone as skilled as Freya would have detected and extracted it. Unless someone baited me in this house, meeting Freya might actually be a blessing in disguise. I can use her guild to collect the information I need and maybe even get access to some victims of the griever. If really there is a link between those two awakened and the illness, by understanding how it works I can guess what their endgame is. Lith used accumulation to refine his core while waiting for dinner. Without his tower and with the storm raging outside there wasn't much he could do. A couple of hours later, someone knocked on his door. Chapter 562. A New Enemy Part 2. Hey Lith, mind giving me a hand before we go get our dinner? Freya asked. No problem. What's the matter? Lith stood up, feeling a little lightheaded. Are you alright? You are way paler than when we met earlier. Freya cast her best diagnostic spell on him before he could even open his mouth. Just tired from almost dying. No biggie, he shrugged. Freya was happy when her spell confirmed that he was perfectly fine, just a bit famished. Yet the dying part made her flinch. Forget about my problem. What the heck is going on here? How did you put yourself in trouble so fast? Off the record? Because it's ranger business, so I need you to keep it a secret. Lith replied. If I have to ask for her help, I need to tell her everything. Otherwise I could endanger her life for nothing, he thought. Sure, I'm your friend before being an adventurer, she said while forcing him to sit on his bed and giving him some beef jerky. Lith told her about his new mission concerning the church and how an assassin had ambushed him while he was on recon. Good gods, Freya blurted out. Your skinwalker armor is superior even to a ranger uniform, yet you're saying this guy had poisoned weapons capable of piercing it? Worse, even the venom was enchanted and the kingdom has very few alchemists capable of creating such a thing. Lith pointed out. You said you took one of them before retreating. Can I see it? If we identify its design or the venom, we could get some clues about the assassin's identity. Freya said. No, if I take it out from my dimensional item, I risk them learning my position. Tracking spells are common for precious weapons, not to mention the possibility of a self-destruct spell. Assassins aren't supposed to leave clues behind. Lith shook his head while munching. True, how many people knew you were in Xantia? I mean, you arrived just a few hours ago and now there's a snowstorm. How the heck did the assassin made it here in time? Good point, Lith nodded. Only Camilla, the city guards, Count Sester, Viscount Crane, and your men knew about me. He stressed the last two possibilities, making her turn pale. Why would Crane put a bounty on your head? For the same reason he doesn't want me here. To get Xantia for himself. If I solve the problems with the church and the illness, he would lose the merits from exposing the Count's collusion with the church and with them the chance of becoming the next city lord. Freya was about to ask why Lith suspected her men too when she realized she already knew the answer all too well. Money. The idea of having a traitor in her guild made her furious, even more so since it wasn't the first time. Calm down, Freya. I'm just looking at all the possible angles. My main suspect is someone else, he said as she bit her lower lip out of frustration. The Count? After all, he turned off his communication amulet after requesting your assistance. That way, he forced you to come even if he wanted to cancel the mission and had all the time to call for an assassin. She said. My thoughts exactly. The only loophole in this reasoning is that he had no way to know the snowstorm would stop me from leaving. Anyway, what do you need my help with? Duluth, the Viscount's youngest son, has the griever again. It makes no sense since we kept him home all the time and checked the preparation of his meals. I said the others it's just the flu to buy some time. I need a second opinion, she said. Fine, if you screwed up, you owe me dinner. After eating the jerky, Lith had realized how hungry he was. Between the adrenaline rush and his paranoia, he had forgotten that invigoration was helpless to replenish the nutrients lost after healing. And if I didn't? You owe me dinner anyway. You can't put a price on your pride as a healer, can you? That would make you stoop to my level. Lith's reply made her laugh, yet she didn't yield. No way, with an assassin around, you need my help, so this makes us even at best. She warped them outside Duluth's door, making the two guards she had left outside point their weapons at their throats out of surprise. Lith caught both short swords between his fingers, locking them into place like they were just pesky flies. At ease, guys, no need to make a scene every time. Freya sighed as she took a mental note to kick them out of her guild. Them being on alert was a good sign, the rage in their eyes instead of relief once they recognized her, not so much. Having failed to learn dimensional magic even though they attended one of the 6 great academies seems to bother them to no end. If they get any sourer than this, I'm sure accidents will happen. She thought. Sorry, boss, said a blonde mage with a snarl. She could barely stand Freya casually flaunting her dimensional magic instead of walking as any normal person would. Lith blocking her swing with just 3 fingers added insult to the injury. Yet Freya didn't warp just for showing off. The Viscount's mansion had many floors and extended for hundreds of meters. With an ill patient waiting for her, she had no time to waste coddling her subordinates' feelings. When they walked through the door, Lith whistled in appreciation. Duluth's room was actually an apartment bigger than his own house. Every piece of furniture was made from the finest materials and had the Crane family crest engraved on it. I can clearly see the hand of a true artisan at work and the ego of a true self-centered asshole messing with him. He's so stingy that he preferred masterpieces to look tacky rather than risking them being stolen. Lith thought. Oh yeah? What's the difference between the two of you? Solus giggled at Lith criticizing someone for being stingy and paranoid. I don't wear glasses. His reply made her laugh harder. The hallway also served as a living room, with several padded sofas arranged around a square table with a cigar box and a tray full of flower petals on it. The wood of the sofa was painted gold, while the silk covering them was deep green, to match the pattern of the precious carpet covering most of the floor. The walls were pristine white, emphasizing the gold of which were made or coated all the ornaments in the room, even the frames of the paintings decorating the place. After entering inside a bedroom similarly decorated and with more gold than a jewelry store, Lith expected the king-sized bed to host a profligate teen. Yet Daluth was barely 10 years old, with black hair like his father and covered in sweat. Lith chanted some gibberish and activated invigoration, performing a full body scan of the child. Are you sure this is the Griever? It takes a tier 1 spell to cure it, Lith said. Yeah, it's the 4th time in less than 2 weeks, so I'm pretty sure. Fever, bloodshot eyes, weakness, and black spots on his chest. Freya lifted the bedsheets and the youth's nightgown, revealing what looked like oversized blackheads. I have good news and I have bad news. Which do you want to hear first? He asked after creating a hush zone around the two of them.